to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul, and Justin Baker, my co-host, and I, on today's show, we'll be going through the top 10 all-time Los Angeles Kings players of all time. That's redundant. The top 10 all-time LA Kings. There we go. This list, lots of Gretzky on your list?
Lots of Gretzky.
Does he appear 3 or 4 times?
5 times.
Okay, good.
Yep.
That's the way it should be. If we were doing all-time best seasons for each team, like a player having one particular season, he probably would have
7 or 10.
have quite a few good seasons for them. But so if you haven't checked out our other top 10 series, I suggest you do so. Go back, find your favorite team. If it's the LA Kings, we're sorry if you feel like we butcher your list, but this is truth right here. Like, you can take this to the bank.
It hurts.
Right. Truth does hurt sometimes. And also, the difference is that, like, if you're a fan of a team, usually there's a player or two that you're like, I can't not have him on my list. Don't care if you wouldn't have him on there, but like, my greatest memory of this team is this guy doing this particular thing. Like,
oh, for sure. Like, a lot of Red Wings fans, for instance, might put Darren McCarty on the list just because of that Claude Lemieux stuff. So, yeah.
Or the Stanley Cup winning goal.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Philly.
One of the epic Stanley Cup winning goals of all time. I believe, who was it? It was what's the play-by-play announcer's name? Who's like, move over, Mario. There's a new, like,
really.
Yeah,
that
was on the national broadcast.
ESPN at the
Gary
time?
Thorne, I think, is who it was. Yeah, move over, Mario.
Stop.
Bye.
Don't ever put those two in the same sentence.
Oh dear. Okay, well, let's dive into these top 10 LA Kings. Let's start off with your just missed.
Yes, my just missed. I got 3 guys.
Okay.
First guy, Game 7 master, Justin Williams. Okay.
Yes.
Mr. 7, whatever you want to call him.
Yes, definitely had a great playoffs for the LA Kings. Didn't necessarily, I wouldn't say he played there long enough, like 427 games, but in comparison to some guys, that's just so far down the list. I mean, he's 36th all time in games played. So
Right. Another guy, Jeff Carter, another Stanley Cup winner for this team, who's had some more longevity than Justin Williams, but kind of been playing second fiddle for most of his career.
He is 16th all time in scoring. So
which is nice.
Fair. He is still behind Alexander Frolov.
We don't talk about that name.
That's any consolation.
And Bernie Nichols on my just missed.
Okay. Also, my just missed includes Dustin Brown.
Okay.
Who is an 8th all time in scoring. And he's played a lot of games. He actually has played the most games in Kings history. I feel like I just couldn't include him in this list. I feel like he's a product of really good players around him. He was there at the right time, and as much as it's nice that he won a couple Stanley Cups for them, he also has been an anchor. Maybe after his career ends, you might go back and forget about the fact that he's really just dragged the team down in a lot of ways.
Recently, yes, absolutely.
Within the last 4 years or so, it's been basically ever since he signed the monster contract.
Well, he was okay last year, but I mean, still.
Yeah, but even so,
right?
Was like, how much of an impact did he really make? They still didn't do very well.
No, I agree.
He had a really nice start to the season. I will admit that, but he misses my list, as well as Charlie Simmer, who is 12th all time, but he is 4th all time in points per game, 466 points in 384 games. He played for the Kings basically through all the 70s. And he had a couple 100-point seasons for the Kings, playing with Marcel Dion, but 56 goal seasons.
Yeah, who didn't have good seasons playing with that guy?
Right, exactly. So those are my just miss. And with that said, let's dive into your number 10.
Yeah, number 10 for me, a guy on your just miss. That's Dustin Brown, the captain, the guy to lift. Well, not captain anymore, but was captain when they lifted the Stanley Cup twice. And you know what? I mean, yes, most games played for an LA King player. Production, maybe not so hot these last few seasons. He's, like you said, kind of been more of an anchor, but he's still been there. He's still been a critical piece to this team, especially early on when Sutter had this team playing some really gritty, hard-nosed defensive hockey, and he was he was a big catalyst for this team, and there's a reason he's leader inside that locker room. Although the point production was not always the greatest, but I went through some LA Times lists and things like that, and found that he's actually really beloved by a lot of fans in that area.
Yeah, but when you think, okay, 2011-12 is the year that they won the first cup. He had 22 goals, 54 points in 82 games. In 13-14, the second year they won the cup, 27 points in 79 games.
Right, nothing to.
So wasn't really. I mean, of course, yeah, he
showed up in the playoffs. Though
20 points in 20 games in the playoffs in 2012, 14 points in 26 games in the playoffs, and that's fair. But. All right, so his two best stretches of his career were in those playoff years, and that's great. It's fantastic. Not to write off. Maybe if we were doing like best Kings playoff performers, I'd have him in there. But as far as all-time guys, I mean, he's never broken 60 points for the Kings. Or 61. I'm sorry, 61 was his top year. But man, he went. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years with less than 40 points in a row. I mean, that's just
like you said, an anchor more of lately. So
and this year it looks like he'll probably end up with around 40 points too on the worst team in the NHL.
Oh boy. Well, number 10 for you.
But fair to have him on the list. All time, most games played. I think probably on most of my lists I have that guy on. So
sure.
It's fair. My number 10 is Zygmunt Palffy.
Oh, okay.
So Ziggy Palffy is 18th all-time in scoring. He only played 311 games for the Kings, but he has 340 points in those 311 games. So that puts him 5th all-time in points per game. And when you consider the era that he played for them in the early 2000s when scoring was at its absolute lowest. In 2000, 2001, he had 89 points in 73 games. In 2002, 2003, 85 and 76, and then 59 and 63 in the season in between those. He was always more than a point per game player for them. He unfortunately got hurt in 03-04, but was running up 41 points in the first 35 games and 16 goals. So he had some really nice seasons for this team, and unfortunately never made the playoffs. But I am putting a little bit of I guess in terms of that time period, there was really no one else, and Ziggy Palffy was highly considered as one of the best wingers in the league at the time. So
okay,
he's my number 10.
I respect it. Moving on, number 9 for me, Dave Taylor.
Okay.
Yeah, he's got some history with this team. Of course, he's 3rd all-time in scoring at almost a point per game. We're talking .962, 1,100 games played, 1,000 points. It's pretty good, and he does have some of I believe the most, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to just double-check this. No, second most, I'm sorry. Marty McSorley holds that record with half the games, but play that Dave Taylor did for penalty minutes. So that one always cracks me up. But anyways, yeah, Dave Taylor coming in number 9 for me, part of that.
And he played 17 seasons only with the Kings.
Right, yeah, a lifer King.
That was it.
And he played during that famed, French Connection, Triple Crown line. I'm sorry, French Connection. Goodness, wrong team.
I mean, in his... outside of if you take away his rookie season, which he did fine in, 43 points in 64 games, 91 and 78, 90 and 61, 112 and 72, 106 and 78, 58 and 46. I mean, some fantastic first few years in the league. Of course, Marcel Dionne's on the team. They had a pretty decent team, but really nice regular seasons, along with all, early on his career, almost a point per game in the playoffs. And of course that goes down later in his career in the early 90s. But yeah, he was a key component to that 80s Kings team. So
yeah,
he is actually my number 8.
Okay.
My number 9 is Bernie Nichols.
Ooh.
Who is 6th all time in scoring, 758 points in 602 games. But his points per game drops him at 3rd all time, 1.259. And he just cleaned up. He had one of the best seasons ever playing, I know, with Gretzky, but
yes.
150 points, and he scored 70 goals. There are very few people that have scored 70 goals, and so I'm pretty sure that's the most goals ever scored in a season by an LA King, and I I don't know. I know Gretzky he had a season with the Kings where he had like 120 something assists, but I think that in terms of goals, that's the best LA Kings season.
Best Gretzky ever did was 54. So,
yep, and it's the third highest point total for an LA King in a season, and Wayne Gretzky has the other two, of course.
All right,
in the 160s. So, Bernie Nichols definitely just an unbelievable goal scorer as well. He is third all time in goals per game, so that's definitely something I'm gonna weigh pretty heavily. In 602 games, the guy's got 327 goals. That's pretty solid, and he started his career there and went on and played for a few different teams after that. But really, his career was mostly in LA, that's where he made his biggest impact. So, Bernie Nichols,
all right,
and almost a point per game player in the playoffs. So.
Great. All right. So at number 8, then you've got Dave Taylor.
Yep. I have Dave Taylor at 8.
My number 8, a little bit of an older king before that famous Triple Crown line, but Rogie Vachon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got the
going back a little further. He was a superstar. Well, he was legitimately LA's first superstar for the Kings. Right. Came in. I can't remember what year it was. It was early 70s, but. LA had not had any star power on the team, early in their existence, and he comes over from Montreal, and he's a well-known, big-name guy, and, until Jonathan Quick came along, he basically held every goaltending record for this team, but...
and won 3 Stanley Cups with the Canadiens, too.
Right, yeah, won 3 Stanley Cups, but, didn't get any, big hardware, but the thing I loved about it, though, is I went back and looked at, some of the voting he got, and of course, he made the All-Star, but he did get voted... Top 3.
He did win a Vezina, but
with Montreal.
With Montreal,
yeah. But he finished twice in the top 3 of the Hart Trophy voting as the goaltender for the LA Kings. And my favorite one, I look at 74-75. Bobby Clark wins it, of course. But the guy at number 3 who he beat out in the voting was Bobby Orr, who finished with 135 points as a defenseman. So if that tells you anything, what he meant to that team, I mean, he was basically it for the LA Kings for so long. And
he had a 197 goals against average that year in the 70s when scoring was pretty high. So
yeah, great. So he comes in at number 8.
That's a great pick. I did not have Rogie Vachon on my list. You know me, not valuing the goalies. But at my number 7, I do have all-time wins leader Jonathan Quick.
Hey, me too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I considered, all right, where do I drop money? Like, of course, Jonathan Quick is the best Kings goalie of all time. I don't think there's any question about it. He also won 2 Stanley Cups, and he wins a Conn Smythe in the playoffs. So there's no doubt best Kings goalie continues to be a goaltender for the Kings.
A goaltender.
I don't know if you consider him their top goalie. I mean, he's also, how old is he? He's the same age as me. Shoot, 33. Yeah. So especially when you start your career so early, like a lot of goalies, they don't really get into their rhythm until, 26, 27. But I mean, he's starting regularly by the time he's
23,
22 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he maybe has a little more wear and tear in his body. Already played 615 games. And he's virtually had to change his style of play with the equipment changing and whatnot. But, probably the most hardware amongst any goalie, right? So, and the most important.
Right, exactly.
And 2-time Stanley Cup winner. He has to be on this list. The 6 players ahead of him are players that I just thought talent-wise, you can't not have these guys on here.
No, I agree.
I don't know if Jonathan Quick's a Hall of Famer, but I'm confident that all the players above him on this list, they are either Hall of Famers or they will be.
Absolutely. No, I agree. So. And I mean, look, Quick has maybe not been his best over the last season and a half. And, we've kind of seen the emergence of Jack Campbell. But you know what? I mean, the results speak for themselves. I mean, he showed up when it mattered most. I mean, the first Stanley Cup for the Kings, he finished with a .946 save percentage.
Insane.
And a 1.41 goals against average. So
well, and there's no saying that, hey, maybe he ends up reinventing himself. It's happened before. He's definitely has the talent to be able to do it. So I'm not totally writing him off completely.
No, and at 33, he's still got a little time,
A
right?
little bit.
But it's
and
running
maybe it's
thin.
a good thing that he's not playing as often.
Right, yeah.
Maybe he finds a situation. And his team's so bad. They're so bad.
Yeah.
That maybe it's just his style isn't going to fit with the Kings anymore. But if he gets moved, I actually think if his salary wasn't so big, I think he'd be a great fit in with a team like Toronto, a team like San Jose. Like I think there's some spots where he could go and maybe succeed. But
hey, if LA ate half of it, I mean, they could move him no problem.
That's true. Okay, well, let's get to our number 6.
Number 6 for me is Robert Blake.
Well, he's my number 6 as well.
Jeez,
Didn't look at each other's list beforehand, but we have a pretty close list here. Rob Blake, all-time leading defensive scorer. I'm sure that won't last for long. Yeah. He is right now sitting, he's 14 points ahead of Drew Doughty, and so Drew Doughty will certainly take him over, but Rob Blake does have a little bit better points per game, and of course he played during a time when points were up a little more. Yeah, Rob Blake, definitely. I mean, unbelievable player. Unfortunately, never really got a lot with the Kings in terms of they had their one Stanley Cup run that they had in 93,
right?
But later on in his career, didn't get the same kind of playoff sniff. I mean, when you think about it, after 1993, when they go to the finals, he made the playoffs 2 other times, and they got swept both times.
Right.
So, unfortunately, was on some bad Kings teams, but then he goes to Colorado and just destroys, and of course he wins.
Yeah,
he wins his Stanley Cup there. And
yep, good on him. And now he's back with the organization, working with another guy.
He's the GM.
Yeah, another guy on our list who is part of the hockey ops there in LA. So, so number 6 for me as well, Robert Blake.
Okay, my number 5 continues on the defensive trend, and it's
me as
Drew
well.
Doughty at number 5.
Jeez.
All right. Well, we don't have to
3 in a row now.
Touch too much Drew Doughty. Drew Doughty is he has one Norris. Did Rob Blake? How many Norrises did he win?
That is a very good question, actually. I want to say he's got one for sure.
Yeah, he does have one in 97-98.
Okay, there it is.
The Norris. So, yeah. So both defensemen with one Norris, but I gave the nod to Drew Doughty since he's won 2 cups, and I think in terms of really good defensemen, I mean Rob Blake was obviously at one point he was the best defenseman in the league, and I think the same about Drew Doughty.
Sure.
I think that it's harder to play defense now than it was in 1997.
No, absolutely. I think a lot of times...
So much faster.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, not only that, but, I mean, back then you could literally just destroy a guy, coming at you full speed, hook him, slash him, grab him, whatever, no big deal. And so you relied a little bit more on brute strength, where, now guys have to be a little bit more skillful. And I think, the nod for me is Drew Doughty, just not only because of the cups, but, the skill level as well. I think he is, much more talented than Rob Blake, and that no knock on Rob Blake because we know how good he is. But
Rob Blake was a big boy.
He was a big boy.
He was like a good Darian Hatcher.
There you go. Okay, I like that.
All right, well, let's move into the top 4, and I think these are going to be some of the big guns. Let's go with your number 4.
Yeah, mine is the center for the Triple Crown line. That is Marcel Dionne.
Okay, number 4, Marcel Dionne. All-time leading scorer.
Yep.
1,307 points. Second most goals, 550. And the second most points per game at 1.419.
Yeah, I don't understand why the Red Wings ever got rid of him, because, believe me, it would have been nice to see him play a few years with Yzerman. That would have been fantastic. But, yeah, I mean... We know the talent level that Dionne has, and
also the most goals per game.
Right, he was fantastic. He had a lot of 50-goal seasons, but he never found the results in terms of playoff success for this team here, and
that wasn't his fault.
No knock on him. I mean, yeah, but I just think because of that, it made it a little bit harder for me to put him a little further ahead because. I mean, when you look at some of the other guys on the list ahead of them, you're going to see they did have playoff success, or they meant a lot more to this organization than maybe he did.
Okay. I think in terms of the Kings' beginnings, he was so crucial to that team. Like, I mean, there was no other reason to go to a Kings game than to watch Marcel Dionne.
Yeah, I think between he and Gretzky, I think they kept this franchise afloat for so long, or alive for that part.
Yeah.
When they weren't having a lot of playoff success.
Yeah, I mean, the guy was just a 7 100-plus point seasons for this team.
Yeah, he was very good. And to think, too, he and I share the same birthday, so maybe that has...
To think. What are the chances? Literally 1 in 365.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, and...
You destroyed the odds.
You know what? It's also funny, too, when you look at Marcel Dionne, at 5'9", playing in an era, where guys could literally just elbow the crap out of you, and he still had a lot of success. It was fantastic.
That is true. My number 4, so he's my number 3.
Okay.
I have him
Not
a little
bad.
higher. I have him above Luc Robitaille, who I have at number 4. Robitaille had 2 stints with the LA Kings. I mean, always just scored a billion goals. He has 557 goals, so most goals all time, just behind Dion in goals per game, and has the second most points, 1,154 in 1077. So an unbelievable player for the Kings. Again, and really had actually some decent playoff success. Once Gretzky got there, I mean, the guy averages more than a point per game in the playoffs. So
That's freaking good.
Can't complain about that at all. And it was just lights out all the time. Lights out for this Kings team. I mean, he in his 2 stints. Obviously, his first stint was his main one in 92-93 when they go to the finals. He had 63 goals that season, and I'd say in the playoffs though, only 9 goals in 24 games. Which I know it's the playoffs, but my guess is that you're expecting a guy. My assumption is that he didn't do too much in the finals against Patrick Waugh.
I don't think a lot of people.
That's
did.
just my assumption. He goes to Pittsburgh. He goes to New York Rangers for a minute, and then he comes back to L.A. and has a couple nice seasons for them, and then he goes on to the Detroit Red Wings and wins them a Stanley Cup. So
yeah, great third line winger for Detroit.
And then, my bad, he went back to the Kings again.
He did. He finished his career out there. Yeah,
three times with the Kings. So Luc Robitaille, my number 4, and then that makes Marcel Dionne, who I think was being a center and playing for the team for as long as Dion did, but also in an era where like there literally was no one else.
There you go.
Like Luc Robitaille did have the advantage of playing with Gretzky for basically the whole time he was there. Marcel Dionne, he was the guy. So that's why he gets a little bit nod ahead.
That's fair. Yeah. Robitaille comes in at number 3 for me. The other thing I love, because I, again, did a lot of digging in like the LA Times and stuff for their top 10 list, and like so many people prior to especially prior to the Stanley Cup wins there, you ask who's your favorite King player all time, everybody would say Robitaille.
Yeah,
he was synonymous
he scored
with
so
LA.
many goals.
He did. Yeah.
So many goals.
And only until recently he was the highest scoring left winger of all time.
That's true.
So Alex Ovechkin
overtook him. Okay, well, let's go with your number 1.
Number 1 is 99 for me.
Going Gretzky.
He is, yeah. I
1.
have to.
Okay. I actually did not. I went with Anze Kopitar.
You know what? I wrestled with it because Kopitar's got the cups, right?
Got 2 Stanley Cups. Gretzky has the 1 cup appearance.
Final. That's it. Yeah. And so that definitely makes a very, very hard argument, either way. But to me, I just looked at the pure raw talent of Gretzky and just how great, what he meant to that organization in terms of, his not only his skill and ability, but his status. As just an icon, and he brought hockey to the West Coast. And I think, you look at the numbers. He had one playoff where he had over, I think it was close to 40 points.
In 88-89, he had 11. They only played 11 games. He had 22 points.
Right. 2 points a game.
In the 92-93 when they went to the finals, in 24 games, he had 40 points.
40 freaking points. And they still couldn't beat Patrick Waugh. I don't understand.
Do you feel like he probably should have won the Conn Smythe? If they could have won another game, it's because I think they lost in 5. Like, how are you going to... You can't give a losing team when you lose in 5 in the final.
Yeah,
if you lose
tough.
in 6 or 7, you maybe have a shot. Definitely 7, you have a shot.
For sure.
Because then at that point, it's generally just a coin flip. But yes, I will agree. Gretzky is the better player, obviously. I'm not I'm not trying to say that Anze Kopitar is a better player. 8 seasons with the Kings for Gretzky, and Anze Kopitar has already played almost double the amount of games that Gretzky's played for the Kings. 2 Stanley Cups, and currently the captain of this team. I mean, totally different eras. I just think the games plus the cups, plus he's still putting up more than a point per game. I mean, even this season right now, putting up a point per game. He had a couple down years, but so did the rest of the Kings, and goal scoring was weird, and they were basically just trying to beat teams 1-0, 2-1 kind of deal with the way that they were playing for a while with Daryl Sutter. But when you look at his playoffs, both years they won the cup, 20 points and 26 points in the same amount of games. So
yeah, he showed up.
Point per game in the playoffs when things have mattered. So I think Anze Kopitar, it's the cups. The cups and the longevity. If Gretzky had played there another 5 seasons, had re-upped there or something, I think it would have been a different story. But because he didn't, I just think Anze Kopitar did what Gretzky couldn't do. And that's a rare thing to say.
That is.
And so to be a guy that, not only...
Well, now Ryan O'Reilly can say he did what Gretzky couldn't do either, but...
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Although, actually, Ryan O'Reilly was... It's not a bad comparison because he got traded there in the offseason. Gretzky was a trade deadline acquisition.
Right.
But, anyways. All right, well, that's your top 10. Well, it's ours. Our top 10 LA Kings of all time. Let us know what you thought of our list. Hit us up at OT Hockey Talk on Twitter and Instagram. And we'll continue this party with more top 10 teams. Justin, do you have an idea of where we're going next?
No clue.
The next team? I feel like we got to hop into the Eastern Conference.
Okay.
I'm like, now we've done so many teams, I can't just throw a rando out there.
Right.
Although I don't think we've done the New York Islanders yet.
We have not.
So I think that'll be our next team, New York Islanders.
Okay.
All right. Well, yeah, look for that in the future. Might not be the next show, but it'll be coming soon. So enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk to you guys soon.